Thank you. I want to welcome everybody to Codependence Anonymous. My name is Shari and I'm codependent. Basically 15 years ago, my life was over. I was at my bottom and ready to kill myself. And I was sharing with a friend. Really, we shouldn't have been friends, but he was everything I wasn't. And I was going on and on and on in my negative, angry way. And he leaned back and said, I can't listen to you anymore. I'm having so much anxiety. And then he just asked a question. Have you ever thought of Codependence Anonymous? Again, my response was angry because I didn't think of it. And it's like, no, I haven't. So that was the start of my spiritual awakening. Basically on the medallions, every coin and medallion in CoDA says, to thine own self be true, discovery, recovery, self-respect. And on the back is the serenity prayer. And I'm gonna read a little bit from the literature. Tradition 3 out of Traditionally Speaking says on page 14, the only requirement for membership is a desire for healthy and loving relationships. And I've talked to many, many people, especially newcomers. No one has ever said no. CoDA is not exclusive, it's inclusive of everyone. And if you have that requirement, you belong here, no matter what. So on page 15, it says, my unhealthiest relationship was the one with myself. And I could relate to that. I hated myself. And then, was I willing to have healthy relationships? And I was a know-it-all, fixer, controller, manipulator. And it's like, well, I want healthy and loving relationships, but I don't know how. So I didn't know if I could survive so much change. I needed to learn what it took to have a healthy relationship. Things like boundaries. What are those? Listening without comment. The willingness to allow the other person to have a different opinion, not right or wrong, just different. And it was a relief to be able to sit in meetings without having to do anything. There are no expectations in this program. The 12 steps are suggested. They're not required. So basically, ultimately, my higher power guides me in communicating in a healthy, loving way. And in the, in CoDA, you won't hear a definition of codependency, but in the Codependence Anonymous Blue Book, call it the basic text or whatever you want, on page 2, it says codependency is a disease that deteriorates our souls. And in this program, you take what you like and you leave the rest. And I don't like the word disease, so I put in condition or lifestyle, and I could relate to that. And so chapter 2 in the CoDA Blue Book talks about a spiritual dilemma. And in the steps, which is where my healing has occurred, the second step starts talking about a higher power and God. And I never had a concept of God that wasn't mine. It was everybody else's. It was my grandmother's. It was everybody else's but mine. And so I started learning in this program that what worked for others may not work for me. Now, to discover that, I had to go through a tremendous amount of pain and suffering. And I walked into my first CoDA meeting in January of 2007. And, I didn't know what codependency was, but I started listening. And again, they don't define it, but once at that meeting, they read the patterns and characteristics. And now, not then, you can go to CoDA.org and type in recovery patterns. And on one side of the page is the patterns and characteristics. And in the last 15 years, they've added the avoidance characteristics. And on the other side is what an authentic relationship looks like. I wasn't on the right side of the page. I identified a lot with the left side of the page. And so one of the things that I have found is many people come to this program, they hear the word God or spiritual, and they cringe, they react, many different things. I have found many people have been wounded by someone else's God concept. And you know what? I was pretty pissed at God when I got here, and I didn't want to have nothing to do with it. So I don't know where I heard it or read it or whatever. I think it's the third step that says, as I understand God. And I didn't understand God, but I threw away everybody else's concept. And I sat down and wrote out what I wanted my higher power to be. And another awakening happened. Many, many things on that list were human, and I had taken them and put them on my husband. Well, needless to say, he failed me. He also left me. And I begged him to stay, even though it was a lifeless, loveless marriage after 20 years. That was the start of my bottom, because before CoDA, I had no friends. In my marriage, I had no friends. John was my everything, my husband. And so when he left, oh, here I am by myself again, and I'm still miserable. And, that's not everything. But then work. Just about the same time, I got fired from the team. And, I'm thinking I'm holding it together pretty well at work, right? I'm professional. I know what I'm doing. I've got it all under control. And I broke down in the director's office, and I said, why? Okay, I'm clueless. This was such a surprise to me. And she said, your teammates are uncomfortable with your behavior. I didn't know what that meant. But there was a person on the team that wasn't doing her job, and it was my job to tell her how to do her job. And in case you think that's healthy, that's just more codependency. So that was okay, I hate myself. I'm useless. I'm nobody. I have no friends. I'm nothing. And the best thinking I could come up with was, I'll kill myself. That was my solution. Now, I didn't want to die, but I wanted the misery and the pain to stop. And that's the best thing I could come up with. So I was already gathering what I needed to do when my friend Todd said, have you ever thought of CoDA? And I walk into Tuesday night at the North Scottsdale Fellowship, and it's one big room of a bunch of strangers. And I'm sitting there, I walk in, I slink in because I don't want anybody to notice me. And these people, oh my God, they're talking about the secrets. And it's like, Jesus, don't you know that you don't talk about the secrets? but I noticed something. They were just saying them matter of factly. There was no shame attached to them. There was no less than, and I wanted that. And later in program, I hear you're only as sick as your secrets. So in this program, I try to keep an open mind. And as I have changed, my higher power concept has changed. And change is difficult, whether it's great change or not so great change, it's difficult. And so that's when I kind of feel unbalanced and need to take care of myself. So, you know, I hear a lot of people in the program say, oh God, I wish I would have discovered this 20 years earlier. So I was 46 when I came into CoDA. At 26, I went to a Codependence Anonymous for Helping Professionals meeting. And, you know, it didn't apply to me. Now, it did, but like I said, I was clueless. And any addiction, the number one symptom is denial. So it wasn't that I said, yes, I'm codependent and I'm not going to do anything about it. It's that I just didn't know. So I gave myself a break because in my 20s, I wasn't ready. At 27, I married my husband. I used multiple other addictions. And I don't talk a lot about my past, but I will share this. A couple of things from my past. Before the event where my life changed when I was 5 years old, I remember one memory, and that was I was riding a tricycle and the neighbor was backing out and I got hit. And the memory I have of that is a good memory in that I don't remember the pain, but I remember being in the bathroom and my parents both being together and concerned for me. And I got a stuffed animal out of that. And I still have that stuffed animal today. Now, the event that changed my life was my parents divorced when I was 5. And I remember my dad leaving. I don't know whose feelings were what, and this may not even be a memory. I mean, it just may be something I conjured up in my mind. But I remember feeling sad and something's wrong with me. You know, 5-year-old children are pretty self-centered and dad's leaving me. It wasn't until I got into CoDA and started doing the work that I realized my dad didn't leave me. He left my mother. I got to see my dad every other weekend. In the summer, he didn't leave me. But from that moment on, I feared that man. I was terrified of him. I was terrified of my mother. Fear ruled my life from that moment on, as well as shame. And so from 5 to 46, you know, you could pretty much say that I was surviving and doing the best I can, but it was a self-defeating lifestyle. And there's no guilt or shame now. It's just what happened. I don't live in right or wrong anymore. I don't live in shame anymore. And there is something that I want to, I'm going to read out of, let me see, in the CoDA Blue Book. First of all, about the first 100 pages are the program. The rest are just stories. But chapter 2 talks about the whole chapter, the spiritual dilemma. Chapter 4 talks about service, a whole chapter on service. And then chapter 5, which I find is great for any newcomer, is just a bunch of questions. And one of them is on page 107, what is the child within? And it says the child within often reacts impulsively, immaturely, or aggressively. and I was passive aggressive. And from 5 to 46, that's emotionally how I lived life. I was reactive. So anyway, I like the literature. And so I'm just going to spend the rest of the time out of common threads of codependency, because this is me in the beginning. And it says common threads of thoughts and behaviors, and I added feelings and beliefs, because all of those things have changed since I got into CoDA. We learned to doubt our perceptions, discount our feelings, and overlook our needs. That was me. I was needless. It became more important to be compliant than authentic. We adopted rigid beliefs about what should be. And if we could just get it right, things would be okay. Now, never did I, because I had so much shame, I couldn't look at me. So I looked at the outside world. Well, it was my parents' fault. It was my upbringing. It was my grandma's fault. It was God's fault. It was anybody's fault but mine. And blaming is very common with codependence. And as long as I blame, nothing changes. I was an ultimate victim and martyr, and I felt sorry for myself. And so basically, it says we saw ourselves as flawed. That led to shame, fear, secrecy, dishonesty, manipulation, control, depression, and isolation. And that was my life. Again, I didn't know it. And so we didn't get to really know others. I can't know you unless I know who I am. And we did not know or trust our own thoughts and feelings. We were unaware of our own contributions to the events in our lives. That means I've got some responsibility there. And the only power I have in life today is the power of choice. I'm pretty much powerless over everything else in life, but how I choose. And after 15 years, I don't always choose well, and that's okay. I used to be a perfectionist, and that's impossible. And now I'm human. And I'm allowing myself to learn and grow and make mistakes. And the key in my life today is awareness. Now, I'm going to go through the steps, but I'm not going to talk about the steps. I'm going to talk about the principles, because the 12th step says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we tried to carry this message. What is this message? And practice these principles. So my life is very simple. It's very peaceful most of the time. And I love my life today. I didn't kill myself. Again, I'm grateful I didn't. So, hiding our true selves in order to fit in kept us isolated and unable to ask for help. Yeah, I get to still practice asking for help because I don't do it well. Constantly denying our true thoughts and feelings was stressful and exhausting. I came to CoDA desperate and devastated. And I'll just share with you, I was depressed all my life. Now, I didn't know that. That was just my life. I just thought everybody woke up every day and said, oh my God, another day to have to get through. I don't know how I'm going to have to be able to do this. Because being in denial, we're left with a sense of emptiness. And it gets back to that deterioration of our soul. And I used many physical things to fill the soul hole or God hole that I've heard people talk about, and it doesn't work. And I'm a slow learner. That's okay. So, what usually got us to our first CoDA meeting was an unbearable suffering that we could not seem to escape. And that was me. And then just one more thing. Without recovery, the cycle of shame, fear, and low self-esteem continues into the next generation unchanged. At worst, we could have self-destructed. Codependency can range from despair and depression to hostility and rage. Untreated codependents can end up hurting themselves and others. And I lived that for what, 41 years. So basically, the principle of step one is honesty, and that spiritual awakening of, okay, I'm codependent, I can fix this, because that's what I do, is just more codependency. Because if I could have fixed it, I never would have come here. And then step two is hope. And I had no hope. I had a miserable life. And then it said, the hope comes from a higher power of my own understanding. And that's where I just was up against a corner. It's like, okay, I'm going to have to get a higher power of my own understanding. And I did. And then I'll just share with you, after 15 years, step three is the hardest step for me. Because there's that little girl that says, I want what I want and I'm going to have it. And you can't tell me otherwise. And that's the one that self-destructs, or as they put it in the literature, leads a self-defeating lifestyle. So, and by the way, I've also heard, take what you like and leave the rest. Okay, well, I was going to leave step 4 and step 9 out. That sounds good. I don't need to inventory myself. And step 9 is I don't need to amend anything. I see people laughing. Yeah, didn't work. And, I had to make my own mistakes. And that's usually how I learn. And sometimes I have to make mistakes over and over. I tried for 20 years to change my husband into the man I thought he should be. Well, it didn't work. And my codependency kept progressing and progressing and progressing. And I kept building more and more resentments. And by the time I got here, I was an expert on resentments. Of course, there's a payoff to every resentment I had, which was self-righteousness. I'm right and you're wrong. And I had to let go of the payoff, because self-righteousness is not peaceful. I'm either above or I'm below. And anytime I compare myself to anyone or anything, I will either be above or below. I won't be equal. And one of the promises says we have relationships with equal partners. And, every human being is a human being. And so I have been humbled in many ways. And yes, I still have some arrogance and self-righteousness. And once I'm aware of it, I can do something about it. So I kept hearing, work the steps, get a sponsor, keep coming back. It works if you work it and you're worth it. Yeah, well, all I knew is in a CoDA meeting, I felt better. And then I would go out in the real world and feel bad again. So I went to a lot of CoDA meetings and I couldn't find a sponsor, a female sponsor. And so this girl was at a meeting. She says, I want to work the steps and I can't find a sponsor. So if you're interested, see me. This is how my higher power was working in my life and I didn't know it. And 5 women spent 2 years, way too long. You know, you work the steps in 12 minutes, you get healed and you leave CoDA and you're cured, right? Well, that didn't happen either. We spent 2 years every Tuesday night after the meeting working the steps, listening to each other without giving advice, loving each other. And we get to the 4th step, that courage part and the secrets part. And you know, there's just a few things I'm not going to tell. And then, oh, but you're only as sick as your secrets. So I cried. I told all my secrets. I knew they were going to get up and walk away. They didn't. They loved me until I could love myself. And things started happening. So we kind of did our 4th and 5th steps at the same time. We did a little 4th, we did a little 5th, and it took a long time. And then 6th and 7th steps. So the 6th step is willingness, and the 7th step is integrity. And oh my God, if my character defects are taken away, I'm going to be more of a nothing than I already feel I am. Again, codependent thinking. And I didn't want to hold up the women, you know, people pleasing. And so I persevered and kind of unauthentically said, okay, God, you know, I'm willing to have you remove my character defects. And then I didn't humbly ask, I demanded, you know, do it now. And this is the best I could do the first time I worked the steps. I was pretty sick. I was in a lot of pain. And what ended up happening is, as my character defects are removed, my authentic self comes up. You know, I'm not a bitch. I'm not a demanding person. I'm pretty kind and loving. And I get to practice patience because I don't do it well. And I can practice the principles in all my affairs. And so I got healed in spite of myself. And if I could describe codependency in one sentence, it is, my mind has a mind of its own. And that sounds crazy. And I got thoughts in my mind that make me feel bad that I don't even know are going on in there. So again, it gets down to awareness. Awareness, once I'm aware of a thought, maybe a negative thought or one that's not making me feel good, I have the ability to change it. And somebody told me about competitive thinking. Well, how do I change my thought? I think of something else. And okay, so I'm thinking of something else, and lo and behold, I go back to that thought again. That's just automatic. Those negative thoughts, you're such a piece of whatever, and you'll never amount to anything, and nobody loves. That's what went on in my head. And what happens is, when I'm aware, you know, competitive thinking is like the CoDA affirmations. I've read all 100 of them. I don't have to believe them. I got a meditation book. There was no CoDA meditation book at that time. I got a codependency meditation book. You know, how do you put God in a godless life? Well, 2 minutes in the morning, I read the meditation book, and 2 minutes at night, I read the meditation book. Okay, that's 4 minutes. That's a start. It's a start. And so now it's spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. There is no right or wrong way to do this program, to do life, to do choices. And so I work the steps on and off because that is pretty much where the miracles happen. In the 12 promises at the top, it says, I can expect a miraculous change. Yeah, right. I never changed. I just got more miserable. And I've been told that the more I expect, the more disappointed I'm going to be. Well, guess what? Miracles have happened in my life. And we all deserve miracles in our life because you know what? We've suffered enough. But it takes work. And the little girl says, you know, I want the cake with the icing without baking it. I want somebody else to do the work. Well, part of growing and maturing is realizing that I'm responsible for certain things. So when I got here and found out I'm powerless over others and I'm not responsible for anyone else's happiness or well-being. Oh, good. The flip side of that is, thank you. I'm responsible for myself. No one else is responsible for me. And so that gets down to, it's my life. I can do with it what I want. You know, I heard a lot of people say, be grateful. I was so resentful. There was no capacity for gratitude until I worked the steps and worked through some of that. And then steps 8 and 9, 8 is self-discipline and 9 is brotherly love. It's very humbling. I went back to my husband, who I thought had ruined my life. And he was the first amends I made. And he listened and just said, okay. And what I realized is the shame went away. All the wreckage, the screaming, the yelling, the manipulating, the shaming I had done, I could never change. That's the past, doesn't matter. I can change today and I don't have to scream and yell. And what I said to my husband was, thank you for leaving me. Because it took what it took, the pain it took, for me to say, you know, I got to do something here. And then step 10, 11, and 12 are the maintenance steps. Step 10 is perseverance. Every day, several times a day. Anytime I get an awareness, that's a step 10. What do I need to do with this information? Step 11, you know, I used to think if I would go live in a monastery, I would be happy. But again, happiness is going within and finding my higher power concept within me. You don't have to have a higher power. You just can't. For me, I just couldn't be it. My friend was kind of rebellious and anti-authority, and he said his higher power was highest consciousness. I don't know what that is, but it worked for him. I think the CoDA Blue Book refers to somebody's higher power as a shoe. At one point in time, my higher power was energy. So it's whatever works for you. Healing can happen. And then step 12 is service. And so the message I have today is, this message is the hope of recovery, which means less suffering and more joy. Today, I'm not depressed. That was healed. Now, I was seeing a psychiatrist and I went to him and I said, I'm on medicine. I said, I'm not depressed anymore. I got healed in Codependence Anonymous and I'm ready to get off my medicine. And his comment was, you'll be on medicine the rest of your life. And that's not actually true. Now, some people do have other mental issues or diagnoses or whatever. And I'm not advising anyone to, if you're on medication, consult your doctor or whoever. If you're in therapy, talk with them. I'm not saying that if you work the steps, your depression is going to be healed, but mine was. And I wrote down what it was like then and what it's like now. I've gone from hopeless to hopeful, depression to joy, self-pity, victimhood, martyrdom, to being responsible, accountable, and having the power of choice if I have awareness. I've gone from ego to spiritual, and every day and every second, I can go back and forth. I've gone from perfect to being human. I've gone from a right and wrong, or a black and white, or an always and never, to different. I've gone from being judgmental to accepting. I've gone from control and fear to faith and courage, although in some areas I still have some fears. I've gone from self to we are all in this together, and unity and service. I've gone from being reactive to thoughtful, resentful to peaceful. I don't have one resentment today. I worked through all of the ones I had with individuals, and then about 5 years ago, I was given the awareness that I have resentments against groups of people, bullies, car salesmen, lawyers, politicians. Oh, yeah. So I got to do all that work. And I've gone from shame to being authentic, from people pleasing to being honest, from having no friends to having several friends, from being unreliable to having integrity. I've gone from being isolated to belonging. We all belong here. If you want to fit in and belong, you can. If you don't, that's okay. The only bad meeting I ever went to was the one where I looked for the differences and what was wrong. I've gone from denial to awareness and spiritual awakening. I've gone from bondage to freedom, and I've gone from death to life. I've done it well at times and not well at times. I've done it peacefully at times and kicking and screaming at times. And, it is what it is. There's also principles to the 12 traditions. And I've done service at all levels because you know what? Service is fun. Being on the events committee, I never had so much fun. And yet, service needs to be rotated. And so I left the committee and did something else. Currently, this year, my friend Todd died. My dog went to heaven. My dad has, as the pulmonologist says, extensive metastatic cancer. Life keeps going, and life is what it is. And life presents obstacles and challenges. And because of CoDA, I am not totally overwhelmed anymore. I have the tools. And a couple of weekends ago, I woke up paralyzed. I didn't know what to do. So I journaled, and I said, okay, well, that's not working. I got a new page and said, what works? And within 2 minutes, I had 20 things written down. I've been in recovery long enough to know. Now, I don't always do what I know. Knowing doesn't make anything change. I have to take action. And change happens. So that's my recovery. There's peeling the onion, and there's the tools of recovery, and there's the principles. And I'll just say on page 22 in peeling the onion, Now, this specifically is about love addiction, but it applies to my codependency. And it talks about the stages of recovery. They talk in this program about spiritual progress, not spiritual perfection. And I'm growing, expanding, evolving, and I'll probably do that until the day I take my last breath. But anyway, the stages of recovery. With recovery experience, we discover deeper layers than we first imagined, peeling the onion. We proceed with courage because we realize we are no longer alone. We have developed a consistent relationship with a higher power, a recovery program, a home group, a sponsor, and the support of recovery friends. I have all that. We have tools, including the 12 steps and 12 traditions, which guide us to new ways of thinking, believing, behaving, and feeling. We are no longer overwhelmed by life. And I was talking with somebody one time, she's not in program, and I said, I don't know about you, but I can't change my beliefs. The ones that I believed for so long that didn't work for me. And she said, oh, I can. And I'm like, God bless you. But I do know that my higher power changes my beliefs, changes my perceptions, changes my thoughts. And so here's what they say. We work the steps. We rely on a higher power. We stop using others or expecting them to meet all of our needs. We set boundaries that ensure our well-being. By the way, no is a boundary. It's not one I'm good at, so I get to practice. We use the tools of recovery. We reach out for help when we need it. We speak up for ourselves. We see others and ourselves realistically. And in the back of the tools pamphlet, there's a bunch of slogans. I like keep it simple, easy does it. There's a meditation I have on my phone every morning at 8 a.m. Smile, breathe, and go slowly. And that's attributed to Thich Nhat Hanh. So again, the CoDA.org website is a wonderful resource. And the azcoda.org website is, ANCOR is Arizona North Codependency Region. And that's where the events committee is. And that's local here in Arizona. And they have their own website, azcoda.org. And I've done service at that level for many, many years. Again, it's fun. It can be challenging. I can grow and expand. And it seems that my life is changing about every 5 years. And this is the 15-year mark. I go through some kind of spiritual transformation. And it's right now, my higher power is the great unknown. And I don't know what's coming. I don't have to know what's coming because, as I said, step 3 in practicing faith, I know my higher power has all the answers and has my back. And I kind of think of me in a rowboat. And the left oar is the steps, which is the suggested program of recovery. And the right oar is the fellowship, which is the meetings and the literature and the tools. And if I row like this, just using the steps, I go in a circle. And if I just use the fellowship, I go in a circle. And I have to use both of them equally. And yet, in a rowboat, I can't see where I'm going. So I'm okay with that now because higher power, whatever that is, kind of knows. And so I am, I've had enough. Mark Twain said, inside every life is a tragedy, a drama, and a comedy. Well, I've had enough drama to last a lifetime, and I've had enough tragedy to last a lifetime. And now I'm all about having fun. So I just want to leave you with this. Just a reminder, in case your mind is playing tricks on you today, you matter, you're important, you're loved, and your presence on this earth makes a difference whether you see it or not. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Shari, codependent. Um, the only way that I ever got rid of my resentments was to do a worksheet from another program. And basically, it's just columns. And it says start with who, what, institution, group I'm resentful at. And then the next column is why, because they're not who I want them to be or whatever. And then the next column is what does that affect in me? How does that affect me? Because there are times where I am wounded. And so did it affect my self-esteem, my personal relationships, my finances, my fear? I can't remember the other one. And then the next one is that these people are ill, dysfunctional, unhealthy, wounded themselves. I don't know what you want to call it. But I have to see that they're just trying to get through life too. So what would I do for another suffering person is I would pray for them. And there is you pray for 30 days for them to have absolutely everything you want. And you just, I just send out good vibes to these people and realize that this is more about them than it is about me. And then the last column is, what is my part in this? Am I being selfish, wanting them to be the way I want them to be? Am I being dishonest and saying, oh, well, maybe I have power over them or whatever? Am I afraid? Like with bullies, I felt threatened. But you know what? I've got tools to set boundaries and take care of myself. I'm not a 5-year-old. I'm an adult. And then the other one is, am I seeking something here? Am I self-seeking in any way? Am I wanting it my way? You know, and so once I get to what my part is, that I have the steps to work through. And you know, like I said, I don't do things perfectly. And by the way, I'm a great resentment builder. I'm an expert on it. The difference today is minutes to hours. Because once that self-righteousness comes up, that's a cue. Oh, okay, I'm building a resentment. And then it's action. It's action to work through it. And so that's the only way that I actually put my resentments to bed or in the past and resolve them. They don't keep coming up. So thank you. Because I think codependents have often taken care of others, when I got into Codependents Anonymous and realized I didn't have to, it's like, well, the only way I take care of others is to tell them what to do, and that's not what a sponsor does to me. Eventually, I was able to find a sponsor that I have today for many years that has over 30 years in the program. And she's wonderful because, you know, she'll just say something and I'll look at the phone like, what the hell? You know, I wouldn't have thought of that. Like, thank higher power for your codependency. And, you know, I eventually worked through accepting that it's not a big bag boogeyman, and that I endured enough pain that there is a solution for the codependency. And so I'm a firm believer in sponsors. Codependence Anonymous is the only 12-step program that I know of, and I'm not in every one, that has co-sponsors, because sponsors are so hard to find. And there's a pamphlet called Sponsorship, What's in It for Me. Also, in the Newcomer Handbook, it talks about the fact that sponsors are few and far between. And I believe higher power puts the people in my life when I need them. So I pray. I prayed and I got my sponsor with 30 years of experience. I went to different meetings and looked. I stay with a female sponsor. That's recommended. There's great information in the literature on sponsorship. Again, I don't know what I'm doing with the steps. I need somebody to lead me through it. But the 5 women, we co-sponsored each other, and higher power kind of helped us through it. We didn't know about the CoDA workbook. So we went to a bookstore and bought a workbook on the 12 steps. I've done the CoDA workbook. I've done other workbooks, but I still have somebody that I can bounce things off of, because my disease deceives me. I'm the last to know. Doesn't deceive my sponsor. And she can give me kind of feedback about things in a loving way that just gets me thinking, or maybe gives me an awareness, or suggests something. And so that has worked very well for me. Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. CoDA.org and CORE is the publisher of CoDA literature. Now, yes, you can buy CoDA literature many other places. When you buy them on CoDA.org, CoDA World gets part of the money from the literature. And there's a literature committee at the world level that's constantly looking for input from the membership and revising and updating and all those kind of things. At CoDA.org, I think it says shop or something like that. And it has everything that CoDA has to offer, like medallions and coins. It has pamphlets. It has books and workbooks and pamphlets. I believe it's even got some CDs from the beginnings of CoDA. And I've bought every piece of literature there is. The pamphlets usually run $3. The CoDA Blue Book runs about, I don't know what it is now, $15 or $18, things like that. So, but it's something I have at hand that is going to remind me of codependency in a positive way. It's hopeful. It's a solution. It just, there's so many different things that are out there that work for me. And I believe at the world level, they're translating into certain languages for other countries and such. So I always recommend, if you're new to CoDA, start with the Newcomer Handbook. Now, some people come to CoDA from other 12-step programs. Again, CoDA's a little bit different. And the pamphlets are only $3. And at CoDA.org, there's some downloadable free stuff, like on boundaries and stuff. And then just as my higher power directs me, or I hear there's a new piece of literature, I go look it up and see, because all of our literature is from the fellowship. It's not professionally written in any way. It's from the fellowship members. So thank you. I go to one home group meeting a week and do service there. I have a sponsor. We talk every week, and as needed, I live the principles, or attempt to, every minute of every day. And the steps tell me the most important relationship in my life is with my higher power, then myself, then others, in that order. And so I do a lot of self-care because I've got a lot going on. But right now, I'm dealing with my last known addiction in another 12-step program. And that is where my focus is right now. So one of the things that I try to do is accept everyone where they're at. There's no right or wrong. If that person feels they're their own higher power, wonderful. Can you tell me about that? How is that working for you? I might learn something here because there are agnostics and atheists. I just know that whatever my higher power is, I can't be it because that's my ego saying, I know. And that's just more codependency. Now, that's my experience, strength, and hope. My favorite topic of conversation is higher power, because you can ask 7 billion people what their concept is. And even if they share the same belief, they're still going to have their concept of a higher power, just kind of like our DNA. 7 billion DNA and trillions before us, everybody's concept of a higher power is just that. And I'm always willing to learn and respect and be inclusive. So, and I might even ask, may I share my concept and we can dialogue about it. So thank you. Thank you. I'd like to share about that. My mother died in 2012, and I got in CoDA in 2007. I had to work the steps 3 times before I was even willing to make amends to my mother. I was quite enmeshed with her. And so part of my recovery was I had to unhook from her. And I did. And I said, I'm not going to contact you for now. Please don't contact me. I just need some space. Once I got my own identity, I was able to separate from her. My mother was a self-identified codependent that had no intentions of doing any recovery work. And that hurt her because I said to her one time, Mom, do you need to be needed in order to be in a relationship? And she said, of course. Well, in my other addictions, $50,000 later, I had borrowed from my mother. And see, I needed her. And I paid her back before she died. And she was not happy because now I don't love her. If I need her, I love her. But in separating, I was able to separate what was my issue and what was her issue. And her issues and codependency were none of my business. So I was able to grieve my mother's death without suffering because we were clean before she died. But I also learned a tremendous amount about my mother as I learned about me. So I think what I said is knowing doesn't change anything. This is a program of action. For me, I wondered if I was a love act because I would go to bed with any man interested because I was very much like my mother. If they needed me, then they loved me. And that's not true. I picked ex-cons, people with no jobs or income, because then I can be in control. And it was not true. It was not fulfilling. It was not healthy. But I know Peeling the Onion talks about love addiction. And to me, love addiction means I have to have a love relationship in my life to survive. And currently I live alone. I'm quite happy. I'm not in a love relationship. And, I'm not ruling it out, but I'm not actively looking. Uh, but that's, higher powers in charge of that. So thank you.